Hey everyone, welcome to the channel and another review. I just got back from seeing Alice in the theater, so let's talk about it. And just to begin, as we always do, we'll just read off a brief synopsis. So this movie is about a slave in the antebellum South who escapes her secluded plantation only to discover a shocking reality that lies beyond the tree line. So my background going into this movie is pretty much non-existent. I saw that it came out last weekend, and along with the three other movies that I did see last weekend, those I was looking forward to more so. So I saw those, and then this weekend I had time to see this one. So it was a new movie that was out, so I figured I'd go and see it. But yeah, I hadn't heard of it until I saw that it was playing in the theater. I watched a trailer going into it, but I was also aware that it was down at like 26% on Rotten Tomatoes. So kind of, yeah, those things, the trailer not really selling me all that much, and the low RT score made it, pushed off from last weekend into this weekend if I had time. But I've seen it now, so we can talk about it. And for this, I'm actually going to go into spoilers, so you've been warned, but I think it's just going to be I think just better to talk freely about a movie and to be able to go into details. So that's what we will do here. So I'll just kind of go through chronologically as the movie plays out and just talk about my thoughts. And to begin, the movie it starts off as, some movies do. It says inspired by true events. And that was, I don't know, I thought that was weird to put at the beginning of the movie because my understanding is the true events that this is inspired by is like the slavery and the civil rights movement and stuff like that. So like general stuff that it touches on from history, but not like this specific story. It's not like a sports story about, some character making it big in the NFL or something like that, where you'd say like it's inspired by true events, but we took some liberties. Like this is, I don't know. It was weird to put in that it was inspired by true events because I think everyone's aware of the true events that it's inspired by to not have to put that at the beginning. But I don't know, maybe parts of it they pulled from like memoirs or writings, if there's any of that of people from the time. So maybe, but it was hard to tell. And then next up, it was kind of an interesting note. I thought it was for the wedding ceremony at the beginning. The normal phrasing is "till death do us part," and in this it said "until distance do us part." And that wasn't something that I've heard before, at least not to my knowledge. And I thought that was just interesting. I'm not necessarily sure what the difference is necessarily between distance and death. If you were to take that literally, like what is the distance? Unless it's just a fancy way of saying "till death do us part." But I thought that was kind of interesting. And then next up, just kind of early on in the film, just the topic of the film, the subject matter had me thinking on, slavery and that sort of thing. And one thought that popped into my head was just to think, or just to wonder if like at that time, if and like how often any of the slaves would have like pondered not, procreating, not having a family and that sort of thing. Like I wonder if that was a like serious moral dilemma because obviously they would have, had people they loved and people that they wanted to start a family with, but knowing that if they started a family, any children that they bear would be born into the situation that they were in those circumstances, which are, they just shouldn't exist to begin with. So I wonder if that was a concern. I imagine it was, and that would have been a very hard thing to deal with to potentially consider, not having a family because of like to not want to have to bear somebody into a life of slavery. And like as I was thinking about that, like the movie then brought up the like Paul was forcing the Joseph character to go and yes, produce offspring with a slave of another or like of a neighbor. And So I thought that it was interesting that like I was thinking about that before the movie kind of addressed it or brought it up that like yeah, I'm sure the African Americans, the slaves would have been like if that was something that they would have thought about, it might not even have necessarily been a choice of theirs if the alternative was getting beaten or killed. Um, yeah, whether or not that's a choice or not, that's I mean, yeah, so it's an interesting. I don't know. I found it interesting, so I appreciated that this movie um, gave me kind of grounds to or the opportunity to think about these sort of things, and it's not something that I've thought about before. So I appreciated that from the movie. And then kind of just moving along, so we have like we get to see into the life of the well they call them the domestics in the movie. I'm not sure why like if the word slave wasn't used back then or what was up with that, but it was yeah I'm curious to know why they didn't use the word slave until Alice later on was reading up on Black history and that sort of thing. Yeah, so we get kind of a window into their life, and then things progress, and Joseph wants to run away, so he goes after I think the character's name is Aaron, who has a gun, and I thought that was just a poorly played out scene. Like he knows how dangerous a gun is, and he wrestles the gun away from Aaron. Great, like yeah, I get that part of the plan, but after he does, he just decides to run away and leave the gun on the ground. Like I don't know why he wouldn't have just picked up the gun and taken it with him, but he just leaves it there so that he can get run down and shot. So I didn't really buy that, but I guess it was kind of needed to drive the story forward and that sort of thing. But I thought that was just kind of a weak scene in general for how it played out. And then, like, I thought they had killed Joseph because that's what it made it seem like. But then, come the end of the movie, we find out he's still alive, and I think it just lessens the impact of that, which is just kind of weird. And then also on the topic of scenes that didn't really make a whole lot of sense. Again, when like Alice attacks Paul and then escapes, but she like smashes the glass jar like on his head, and like I don't know, like maybe it's yeah, you just don't really think when you're in the moment. I guess that might be the case, but you'd think that she would have tried to like that's a glass jar, so why like I feel like the smart thing to do would be to smash it on his head, but then immediately go for the shattered glass and use that as a weapon against him and not as a last resort when he's almost killed her. I don't know. So it's just, I feel like the characters could have been a bit smarter in some of those situations. But at that point, Alice runs away, and I thought the movie did a good job of just like immediately putting you, or like when she gets out of the forest and then the car drives by. It wasn't quite a jump scare, but it was a bit of a shock just how it was done. I thought that was filmed and edited well. The next thing is that so this is still 1970s. I think it's 1973, but it's in the 1970s for when this takes place. And we're still in Georgia, but it seems a lot more hospitable to African Americans than at least, I mean, I wasn't alive then, so I don't know what it would have been like, but other media take like Remember the Titans, that's in Virginia, but Just Mercy, that's in Alabama. Both of those take place in the 70s, and they depict environments in the South where it was much, much more hostile still towards African Americans. Like it wasn't to the level of hospitality or hospitableness that this movie depicts. So I thought that was kind of strange because I don't know, from the other media that I've seen, it seemed like it was painting it in a better picture than it actually was, which I don't know, I thought was strange for a movie that was, covering just this topic in general of civil rights, like to not really go the whole way there. So, but I don't know, other small critiques, I thought it was very unlikely that the first three magazines she sees have African American, women on the front, and that when they're flipping through the channels, all three channels that they watch have African Americans. So I was like, I don't know, that as well for like the 1970s. While those would have been there, they wouldn't have been. I don't think it would have been 3 for 3 on all those accounts, which and it just kind of took me out of the movie because it didn't. I didn't really buy that was 1970s, Georgia. And then next up, I thought the movie kind of did. In some places it did a good job, in others not really, as far as depicting like Alice adapting to the modern world, relatively modern from her point of view. And so like I thought they did a really good job at first of like her not like of getting motion sick in the car. Like yeah, that's I think very believable. Somebody who hasn't been in a car before to do something like that. And then I think just kind of her having a bit more of like a reserved nature in general and um, not really trusting Frank or anything. Like I feel like that's fairly believable. But then there are other things. I think after like kind of the initial shock of it, it seemed like she picked up things a lot faster than I think most people would. Like maybe they just didn't show things, but like I don't know. Like I was surprised that she figured out how to use a telephone without like he started to show her how to use it or what it did, but she didn't let him finish explaining what it was. He kind of made a comment offhand, but that's not to like I don't mean to like insult the intelligence of Alice, but I feel like somebody who's coming from like an 1800s mindset to 1970 uh, is I feel like there'd be a far larger learning curve than what she had. But I don't know. That might just be me. And I thought it was kind of funny that like the food that Frank is like showcasing is like really good as bologna because that's something that I grew up on. I had quite a bit in my lunches. And it's not something that I would showcase to anybody. But hey, if there's people out there who absolutely love it, I'm happy that you do. I wouldn't wish otherwise because that's yeah, it's like movies. Like if there's a movie that I don't like, I'm not going to be upset or wish that other people don't like it as well. Like if there's more people who can enjoy something in the world than not, that's a good thing. And then I thought it was kind of interesting when so like as Alice like after she's read up on the civil rights movement and everything like that, and she's embracing her freedom and understanding that she is free. I thought it was interesting that the first few things she does are any things that you would either get, fined or, some sort of jail time where she, well, assaulted, what's her name? Rachel. She met up with Rachel and then assaulted her. Like, that's assault to slap somebody across the face. Like, even if they, used to treat you like crap, and like, I understand why she wants to do that, but this is just, my very analytical brain picking apart these little pieces. But this is at least these were the thoughts that I was thinking when watching this scene. So she assaults Rachel. She dines and dashes. She doesn't pay for her coffee from what we see, and then she goes and assaults Paul to end the movie and shoots him a few times and that sort of thing. So it's yeah, there's an explanation certainly as to why she would feel the need to do that or feel compelled to do that. And we as a viewer, we see a certain justice and satisfaction to that. Kind of similar to other things like, anytime an evil character kind of gets what's coming to them, there's a personal satisfaction there. But at the same time, I don't know if it's necessarily the best thing to do to show that, when a character goes from being a slave to being free, some of the first things she does are, against the law. And, whether or not those laws should be there, is one thing. I was glad that she didn't kill Paul. I think that would have been far more irredeemable, because and while you might argue that it's justified, there are plenty of states now that don't allow the death penalty. Like, and there's a reason for that. There are plenty that do, but I live in Minnesota. I don't believe that the death penalty should be a thing. Not to really get into politics, but it's, I mean, it kind of goes back to the like the Batman philosophy. Just because somebody is evil, does that, you know, justify them being killed? So I was happy to see that she didn't go to that extent, and that it was just, you know, shooting him in the knee, both knees, and that sort of thing. So I think that helped me kind of accept that, or not like necessarily nitpick it as much with her. Like some of the first few things that she does once she kind of embraces her freedom is, yeah, things that, you know, are contrary to the law in the US. But so still not really sure what the explanation was as to everything. Like my initial impression was that she just somehow found like a wormhole and went forward in time. But I think as the movie went on, my final understanding is that this was literally like a plantation in the middle of a very secluded woods in the 21st or the 20th century. I guess they would have never seen planes come overhead, although yeah, so it wasn't a wormhole, it's just like that place existed in the real world. Because I think when like Daniel comes and is staying there and he snuck in his radio, like the radio still works. So I think if they were actually traveling between time periods, the radio wouldn't have worked. But I don't know, the movie didn't really make that clear whether or not she was traveling through time, or if this was just some sort of messed up, secluded grove or forest where they were able to set up a plantation and make all of the African Americans that were there think that they were in the 1800s and still slaves and that sort of thing. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. I wasn't necessarily sure what the movie was actually trying to go for, or what the story was with that. But yeah, I mean, in the end, I think you can probably get my general thoughts, or what if I'm, yeah, at having kind of, there's been a lot more negative, a lot of mixed, kind of talking through these points. There's a couple things that I liked, but overall, I wasn't really fond of this movie. I was fairly bored throughout it. I thought the script was actually very poor, and I didn't care for the script at all. I thought the acting was fine, but I mean, you can only do so much given a script like that, so I can't really grade the acting given that the script was as poor as it was. But so overall, I unfortunately didn't really care for this movie. I appreciate kind of the subject matter that it's tackling and some of the ideas that it's trying to put forward. But at the end of the day, I didn't really care for it. On a letter grade of S, A, B, C, and D, I would give it a D. I just wasn't entertained. I didn't really get it. But maybe that's just me, but it's not one that I would recommend, unfortunately. Again, like, I wish I could say better things, especially because I think of what it's trying to do and, the subject matter that it's trying to tackle. I wish it was a better movie, but, it's not one that I enjoyed. So that does it for my review for Alice. If you've been able to see the movie and, want to share your thoughts, I'd love to hear them in the comments down below. Otherwise, if you've enjoyed this review, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe so you don't miss my next video. Alright, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next review.